Most days I wake up very early in the morning. I spend about an hour in silent prayer being with the Lord. I spend some time praying the Liturgy of the Hours, which is an obligation of all priests around the world. I celebrate Mass very often with the community, sometimes on my own. If I don't have confessions or a funeral that morning, then I'll take some appointments or I'll sit in the office and get some work done. If I don't have a lunch appointment with somebody, then I will take a lunch by myself at the house, reading a book, enjoying just a little quiet time by myself. I then return to the office for appointments and to sign checks and to do email. In the evenings, I might teach a class. I might be at a family's house for dinner. I might be hosting people at my house for dinner, especially for marriage prep. I try to have some quiet downtime in the late evening. I pray night prayer and I go to bed late. And then, of course, some days I need to integrate weddings and funerals and confessions and visits to the hospital or homes to anoint people. And somewhere in there, I need to find some time to prepare my homily for the upcoming weekend. But who really cares? In the end, a priest's life is not any more interesting than anybody else's life, but sometimes people like to ask the question. They want to know, what does a priest do with his day all week long before Sunday Mass? I think people are interested because very often people only see the priest for an hour on Sundays, and so the rest of his week just seems like a mystery. What could he possibly be doing all week long waiting to deliver his homily the coming Sunday? I actually think that maybe more than talking about the individual details of what a priest does with his time, it's more interesting to ask, how does a priest structure his day, or how do any of us structure our day? Ultimately, you and I are responsible for making sure that God is the central part of our life. Does our schedule reflect that? And so maybe that's the better question when we ask a priest about his day. How is the Lord the center of what his life is about? How has he structured his day in such a way that he's consistently getting in touch with the Lord, listening for the Lord, and living in the Lord? A rule of life is an intentional plan to make sure that God is at the center of everything that we do. Religious orders are famous for having really good rules of life, right? They have a set schedule for their prayer time. They have a set schedule for what their ministry time looks like. They have a schedule for what their community time, when they're spending time just building up fraternity or sorority with one another. That's called a rule of life. My schedule that I've presented to you, that's my rule of life. That's how I have intentionally structured my day to make sure that I'm in touch with the Lord regularly. Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of responsibilities in there, things that can't change, things that I have to get done because I'm the pastor or whatever. But I've scheduled my life in such a way to make sure that I'm praying at the beginning of the day. I've got some prayer time in the middle of the day, maybe smaller things, maybe just the rosary or the chaplet or a quick daytime prayer. And I've got to make sure that I've got my nighttime prayer as well that's more intentional. I've got an exam in there where I'm spending some time thinking about how the rest of my day went. So I've got these points throughout, and I've learned that that's extremely important for myself. If I don't have a set schedule, a set rule of life for myself on how I'm going to make sure that the Lord is the center of my life, then he never becomes the center of my life. I get so pulled in different directions and I'm distracted, and then by the end of the day, I'm usually exhausted. I've got just a little bit of time left for the Lord, and it's not very good time. It's a very distracted time usually. So for myself, I've discovered that having this rule of life has made a huge difference for me. I realize that many of us don't have a rule of life where we're prioritizing a relationship with God. But I would say if we don't, we're going to pay the price. We're going to be scattered, meaning that we got our hands in everything. Like everything has basically become the priority. Therefore, nothing's the priority. So the stuff that I really want to be getting done, the stuff that really is important to me, my growing closer to the Lord, is just always going to be an afterthought. I haven't actually made the time for it, so I'm scattered. I'm going to feel hurried because I've just got so many things on my plate because I haven't prioritized my schedule. I haven't prioritized my life. I've got so many things on my plate. I'm hurried. I'm exhausted at the end of the day, and I barely have time for prayer, even if I wanted to pray. All of us benefit from creating a rule of life because we're putting the thing that we're made for, as the first thing. We've been made to know, love, and serve the Lord and be with him forever. And so we're crafting our schedule in such a way that shows that, yeah, that's the most important thing to us, to know, love, and serve the Lord. And of course, we've got to make room for all the other essential things in our life as well. Family, friends, health, relationships, work. Yes, you have to build around all of those things as well. But to make sure that we've got those touch points with the Lord throughout the day, that is huge. I found for myself that because I've got prayer throughout the day, there's going to be times when I'm super distracted earlier in the day, or one of those prayer times that I had just wasn't that great or that fruitful or whatever. But thankfully, I have another time of prayer coming up later. It is super hard to implement a rule of life because it requires discipline. We have to do it over and over again. But honestly, just like every other virtue, the more that we do it, the easier it gets. Once the rule of life is in place, it is incredibly liberating. No longer will we have to feel scattered all the time because we're not treating everything like it's a priority. We know where our priorities are, and everything else can fit in when it gets the chance. And for the same reason, we don't feel hurried anymore because we've built time into our day to rest. We've built time into our life to do the things that are most meaningful for us. And we're no longer reactive to just the urgent things that come at us. If you've never crafted a rule of life, then now is the time to start. Ask God to help you develop a rule of life that helps you to grow in union with Him. And I think you'll find that He puts Himself right at the center of your life. God bless you.